So, Super Mario RPG is getting a remake in 2023 on the Switch. I could not be more excited, and as someone who spent most of his life making Super Mario RPG content, now that this game is coming back, I felt like I needed to make some more. And so that's what this video is. It's going to be an overly detailed breakdown of the trailer that we saw for the remake. Now, I've seen so many takes online that this game is essentially a one-to-one recreation and is extremely faithful, but I'm not sure it is after really digging into the trailer. So we're gonna go over some of the changes and also some of the things that they've kept the same, and we're gonna start at the beginning of the trailer and work our way to the end. Just a quick note though, guys, I will be making some comparisons with the original, and because of that, I'll probably be talking about some stuff that did not appear in the trailer, and I would consider those spoilers, so if you haven't played Mario RPG and you're gonna do so for the first time with the remake, this is your warning. There will be some spoilers in this video. Alright, let's get started with the first change, and that's that Mario's house is now actually called Mario's house. It's no longer the Pipe House. I'm not entirely sure why they needed to change this. It's not that it was to reflect the original Japanese release because it's also called Pipe House there, but I do have a guess, and I think that's because they wanted to make it more consistent with Paper Mario. In the first two Paper Mario games, they open with cutscenes of the brothers at their house, and that house is called the Mario house in those games and is even designated that way with a sign at the top of it. So I can see from Nintendo's perspective why they might want to keep this consistent, even though Super Mario RPG and Paper Mario are technically two different series. Another naming change is that the game is just called Super Mario RPG, not Super Mario RPG Legend of the Seven Stars. There have been a ton of theories floating around the internet as to why the subtitle is dropped, and I have my own, but let's put a pin in that for now until we get to the last scene of the trailer, because I wonder if that's where we can link this change together. In the first couple of scenes where we see Mario running and jumping around, there's not too many changes to each of the individual areas, but there is a global change here. The camera angle has definitely shifted to be a little bit lower, and it actually results in more of the play area being in focus. The camera's not quite as top down as it used to be, and that should actually make it easier to control Mario in any sort of isometric perspective. When we get to the scene of Mario and Karo sewers, we can see that Mario now has a new swimming animation. And that's awesome because in the original Super Mario RPG, he doesn't. It's actually kind of funny how they did that back in the day because Mario's head just sticks out of water and he just kind of slides through it. There is no swimming animation to speak of. The trailer then cuts to the cloud part of Bean Valley, and what's interesting here is that in the original game, the whole background was filled with those clouds with the smiley faces on them, but in this shot from the new trailer, we can only see one cloud. This is one of those changes where I'm not sure it's necessarily a good one because the background now looks far more generic, but my guess is that Square and Nintendo wanted to change it just for visibility and readability. Climbing those beanstalks in the original was probably the hardest bit of platforming in the entire game, especially for people who are going back to play it now because of the limited technology and perspective and camera angle and all that kind of stuff. And so having less noise in the background probably makes it easier to line up Mario's jumps on the beanstalks. So I'm guessing that's why they made that change. After those gameplay snippets, we kind of enter a totally new realm of Super Mario RPG, and these next two scenes, combined with some of the ones later on in the trailer, are absolutely fascinating. So first up, we see a cutscene of Mallow falling down the stairs in Mushroom Kingdom before it shifts over to Geno taking his doll form. And not only do I love these scenes, but they are very clearly cutscenes, and cutscenes didn't really exist in the original. There were a couple of scripted scenes that used the original engine, but not full-on cutscenes. And of course, yeah, that's a limitation of the technology in 1996. But it seems like they've made completely new movies for introducing your party members, because these are the two spots in the original game where Mallow and Geno are introduced. I think this is great because the developers are gonna get the chance to really show off characters' individual personalities as soon as they hit the screen. And I love how Mallow falls down the stairs, gets up, and then kind of looks tough. It's a nice little twist to his crybaby persona where he's, trying to put on a brave face now. And I think it's just great. It looks great. It fits Mallow. I'm sure they're gonna do a great job. The animation looks solid. It's gonna be great, but it looks like we do have intro cutscenes for when people join the party. After those two cutscenes, we do see our first look at the battle system, and this is where I gotta bring back the whole, is this a faithful recreation of the original Super Mario RPG? Because this is where the bulk of changes seem to be. So to start, there are a couple of minor changes. The UI has been moved from the top left to the bottom right, and with a slight camera angle change, like the one we talked about earlier, this allows players to see more of the field of action when they're in a battle. Characters now have HP bars in addition to their plain text numbers, and that is a great quality of life usability feature because it makes it really easy to see how much HP you have left without actually having to read the text. A really nice touch here is that character portraits in the battle UI actually reflect their original artwork. For those who haven't seen it, all of the original artwork for the main party members has them standing straight up, looking kinda to the left, kinda to the center of the screen. It's super, super awkward. It was early CGI, but it looks like they're actually using that original posing just with updated models, which is a really, really cool touch. We can also see that to the left of all of the character information, flower points are here, which is another really nice quality of life change because previously in the original game, you could only see your team's shared flower points if you went into the specials command to use a special move where it would tell you. This way, players can do a better job of planning their strategy and deciding when they want to use special moves and all that kind of stuff because they can see it at all times in a battle. I find it absolutely fascinating that while Square and Nintendo showed off a ton of different things in all of the battle scenes, they didn't show simply selecting an attack or action. The battle UI in the original Mario RPG is iconic, with the Super Nintendo controller face buttons being around a character and each one of them corresponding to a specific action. One of the reasons why that UI works so well is because each set of two buttons, X and Y and A and B, have two different colors, so it visually breaks it up on screen. And in the Japanese version, the Super Nintendo controller has 4 different colors, red, blue, green, and yellow, so it really makes it easy to visually parse what you want to do. However, the Switch uses all black buttons, and if you just had 4 black squares surrounding a character, I'm not sure it would be as clean and neat and convey what it needs to, and it might actually make it more difficult to use than simply a standard list menu select. I can't believe we didn't see the battle UI, given how standout it is from the original and how recognizable it is, but my guess is it's probably because they're changing it, and I wonder if that's also why the character information stuff had to be moved from the top left to the bottom right. Speaking of UI and big changes, the biggest one so far that we see in this trailer is the percentage meter in the lower left corner of the battle screen. This is almost certainly called the action gauge because in a couple of scenes later when Mario lands a timed hit, in the list of buffs that timed hit gets him, and we'll talk about that in a second, we can see that it also mentions action gauge. So I'm pretty confident that this is what that percentage meter is called. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure what it does, but if I had to guess, I think Square is reaching back into the bag and pulling out a system like the tech system from Chrono Trigger, and this meter allows any combination of teammates that are on the field to use a one-off special attack. The reason why I say that is because if we fast forward later on into the trailer, we see a whole bunch of different cutscenes. We see one where Peach is in the middle with her umbrella and Geno and Mario are to the side of her. We see one where Bowser and Mario and Mallow are riding in the Koopa Clown car. And then we see one where Geno is just going crazy and decides to light up whatever's in front of him with a whole bunch of bullets and other, shooty stuff. None of those cutscenes exist in the original game. And in the case of the Bowser Koopa clown car with Mario and Mallow, that one is fascinating because Bowser does use the Koopa clown car in the original game, but it's literally for the first 5 opening seconds, and he never touches it again until we see it in the ending scene. Mallow, at any point in the game, would have no reason to interact with Bowser when he uses his Koopa clown car. It's not even possible. And given that Mario is there with him, since you can't change him out in the game, I wonder if this is a super attack where the team is Bowser, Mario, and Mallow. And this is just one of the super attacks you can do with that configuration. Same thing where Peach is in the middle with her parasol. The background of this suggests that it's around the Yerdovich fight because it's sunset, and during that scene in the original game, Peach has no significance whatsoever. Like, yeah, she can be in the party, but she doesn't have any significance. Yerdovich only talks to Mario, and so I wonder if this is them getting ready for an attack. The move that Geno uses does not correspond to any of his specials. It's definitely not Geno Beam or Geno Whirl or Geno Blast or Geno Flash. And it kind of is one of his regular moves, but there is no way that that animation is used for a regular attack because we see what the normal battle screen looks like. I'm fairly confident that you build that meter up by successfully performing timed hits. And from that, you get a super attack. And if that's the case, I cannot even begin to describe to you guys how hype I am for that, because it does a couple of things. One, it rewards you for timed hits, and that just means that the game becomes more skill focused in general. But two, if that's the case, it also rewards players for experimenting with different lineups. Nowadays, whenever I go back and I replay Mario RPG, I purposely use different lineups. But as a kid, no matter how many times I played through it, my lineup was always Mario, Bowser, Geno. I thought it was the coolest lineup. It was my favorite set of characters in the game, and I never ever strayed from it. And that meant that a lot of different playthroughs kind of felt the same. With this, not only do you get cool new cutscenes for these super attacks, but the party configuration matters. And I would want to see all of the different attacks. I would want to see their effectiveness, how strong they are. I hope that my read on this situation is right, because I think that would be a super cool change. Going back to the battle scene, we can see a couple of small visual tweaks. And the first one is that there is a visual indicator now for when you should block an attack and when you should do your timed hit. I'm mixed on this, to be perfectly honest with you, because yes, modern sensibilities say that we should absolutely have a visual indicator for when things should be blocked and timed. Without that, it could be a little bit difficult to really figure that out. But at the same time, Mario RPG uses a simpler timing system than something like Paper Mario or Mario and Luigi. It's just one button. And I always felt like the original animations for both enemy attacks and your attacks were so intuitive that you could figure out the timing yourself. I still think this is a positive change. I think it needs to be there. It appeals to modern sensibilities. I understand that. But given how simple the battle system and timing was, I'll be interested to see how it feels when we actually get the game in our hand and we can match up our actions with the visual indicators. But that brings us to two big changes. What happens when you actually successfully pull off those timed hits? So we can see here that when Mario uses the Knock Knock shell correctly, on the left side of the screen, it says that his chain attack went up from 2 to 3. I am pretty confident, just like many other takes that I've seen on the internet, that nailing consecutive timed hits builds up your chain. What's more interesting is that it appears that players get perks or boosts for nailing timed hits. We can see here on the left side of the screen that magic attack, and speed are impacted. I'm assuming that this means that they go up for the party. Maybe it's for the individual character, but my guess is that all of these boosts would go up for the party. In the very next scene, Peach uses a timed attack, but instead the boosts seem to be defense and magic defense. So I wonder if nailing a timed hit with a certain character impacts which boosts the party gets. This would be another change that makes this battle system fundamentally different from the one in the original version of Super Mario RPG. But if it does emphasize timed hits, again, I'm all for that because timed hits are the central mechanic to the game. It's a skill element, and I think emphasizing that is always a good thing. What's super interesting about that previous scene where Mario uses the Knock Knock shell is that not only does it damage the gorilla he's attacking, which, by the way, that is the actual name of the enemy in the original game. I know a lot of people online have been like, why is Donkey Kong chained up? But it is just gorilla. It is an homage to Donkey Kong. It's spelled G-U-E-R-I-L-L-A, not like the original way of doing gorilla. But when Mario attacks him, rant aside, he also does spread damage to Wiggler. Spread damage is an interesting concept because Paper Mario and Mario and Luigi do have that, but Mario RPG never did. It only had area of effect damage when you were using a special move. I don't know how I feel about this, to be totally honest with you, because again, if it's a reward for hitting a timed hit, great, because we're emphasizing skill. But Mario RPG was also a very simple game, easy to understand, but also easy to play. It never really had a lot of difficulty. And I just wonder if that's going to make it easier. However, I'm kind of baiting you guys there because if we look at the damage numbers done here, they're actually noticeably different than what you would typically see from a playthrough at this point in the Forest Maze. Now, we didn't see it in this trailer, but in the original game, when a character levels up, you can give them a boost to one of three categories. The first one is physical attack and physical defense, the second one is HP, and the third one is magic attack and magic defense. Obviously, that changes your damage received and damage dealt, but I went back and tested this and I watched a couple of Let's Plays, and typically, you would not be doing 60 plus damage to a gorilla at Forest Maze if you were following any sort of standard level curve. And later on in the trailer, when we see a glimpse of one of the boss fights, specifically when it's Mario, Bowser, and Peach fighting Yerdovich, he does a move called Water Blast. For those who have never played the original game, Yerdovich is a huge difficulty spike. It is oftentimes where people experience their first death and might have to do the first and only bit of grinding in Super Mario RPG, but he always leads off with Water Blast. He's hard-coded to do that. I again went back and tested it, and I watched a bunch of Let's Plays and long plays just to make sure, but it appears that Water Blast damage from Yerdovich has actually been toned down. Again, impossible to know because we don't know what character bonuses have been selected as they've been leveling up, but typically on Bowser it does over 80 if not 90, and in this trailer it does 60. This makes me wonder if the entire game has been rebalanced. Because not only would they have to account for the introduction of super attacks, but they have this chain system, they have spread damage. It seems like there has been a fundamental rebalance to the game's enemies and bosses and even the player characters to account for all of these new mechanics. And this is why I don't think the take that this is a faithful one-to-one recreation of the original Super Mario RPG is accurate. Again, I'm just speculating. I could be totally wrong on what these mechanics do, but I feel fairly confident in what I'm telling you guys, and even if I am wrong, I think it is clear that there is some sort of change. If the game is rebalanced, I think that's great. I think Mario RPG actually could stand to be a little bit harder. There is a difficulty spike or two, like I mentioned. Yerdovich is definitely the difficulty spike in the original game. But in general, if it is a little bit harder, I think that's actually going to be really good for the player experience. I hope that if the game is indeed rebalanced, I hope that Square and Nintendo give us options. So play the game with the original difficulty, play it with hard difficulty. If you're experienced, go on this veteran mode, something like that. I think that would be really, really cool. I also wonder if there's going to be a quote-unquote original mode that takes away whatever the percentage meter does, the spread damage, all of that kind of stuff. Those are huge sweeping changes to the battle system. I really can't emphasize that enough, and it just makes me wonder if something like that is going to be there. What I'm hoping for, what would be the actual best timeline, is that these changes are so surgical with a precision that really makes this a great new experience, that there is no definitive version of Super Mario RPG after this, that there's the original, which does this really well, and there's this remake, which does this really well. That would be great because it would basically be like getting two wonderful games that take place in the same universe with same characters, but they're almost not spin-offs of each other, but more so alternate versions of each other. That would be the dream, but we'll have to wait and see more footage till we get people previewing it or until the game's in our hands, however they're going to handle the marketing for this game. But it does appear that there are some big changes. Another thing we can see from the trailer is that Peach is now called Peach, which for all the newer players, some of the younger fans, that probably seems a little bit weird. But in Super Mario RPG, she was always Toadstool. Fun trivia fact in case you didn't know, Super Mario RPG was actually the last game where Peach was called Princess Toadstool. The first game where she had her new name that now has stuck, Princess Peach, is actually Yoshi's Safari for the Super Nintendo, which, quick rant incoming, Yoshi's Safari is a great game. If you've never heard of it, it is literally a fever dream. It is an on-rails first-person shooter where Mario uses the Super Scope to gun down enemies. None of the last two sentences that I said are an exaggeration. That is real. You had to use the Super Scope to play it. It took 6, I think, C batteries, which was obnoxious. It had a special sensor that you had to plug into the Super Nintendo. But oh my God, busting out the giant Super Scope, putting it on your shoulder like a bazooka, and just firing away at the screen was such a fun time as a kid. If you ever have a chance to play it, play Yoshi's Safari. But yeah, in the Super Mario RPG remake, she is Princess Peach. That is 100% expected. There is no way they were going to re-release this game ever and call her Toadstool. But it is a change, and it is one that I wanted to note. We kind of talked about it a couple minutes ago, but bosses appear to have intro cutscenes, which again, all 4 really show off their character, their zaniness, their craziness, the differences between the two. But we do see 3 of them. We see Croco, we see Birdo, and we see Valentina. Now, the interesting thing here is that Birdo's cutscene, I'm assuming, happens mid-battle. In the original game, you actually fight the eggshell around Birdo first, and then it breaks open to reveal Birdo, and I'm assuming they're keeping that the same, and it happens mid-battle. It would be a really interesting change if they decided to just forego that first phase where you're attacking the shell and go straight into Birdo right away. Honestly, it wouldn't be the worst change because the first phase really doesn't mean anything. If you've played the original Super Mario RPG, you just beat up on the shell. It doesn't counterattack. It's nothing special. It's just to crack it open and reveal Birdo. So maybe they did make that change. I'm not sure. I can't tell from the cutscene itself. Speaking of Valentina, these are probably the changes that you've already seen, but she has 2 changes that we should go over. So the first one is the one the internet can't stop talking about, but in Super Mario RPG for the Super Nintendo, and also for this game, we can see that Valentina is, well endowed, but in the Super Nintendo version of Mario RPG, when you attack her, let's just say that realistic physics for women characters were not quite where they are today. And instead, you get a hilarious, over-the-top depiction of what would happen if you were to attack someone like Valentina with her physique and, she took that impact. Now in the remake, that's not a thing, and honestly, probably for the best. But I'm sure a lot of people will mourn the loss of the jiggle physics that we will no longer be getting. A more subtle change to Valentina is that she is now holding a margarita in her hand, which, can we talk about Nintendo allowing a Mario character to hold an alcoholic drink in 2023? Because there's a history with that, believe it or not. In the original Super Mario RPG, she does hold an alcoholic drink, but it's a martini, and that was actually a sprite error because in the Japanese version, her name is Margarita. And that is why she is now properly holding a margarita, and they've made that change in the remake. But there is a history, for those who don't know, about alcoholic depictions in Mario games. One of the most famous ones is that in Super Mario Kart for the Super Nintendo, Bowser and Peach have celebrations when they win a Grand Prix where they have a bottle of champagne. But those were heavily changed in all versions of the game outside of Japan because Nintendo didn't want alcohol to be associated with Mario. So the fact that Valentina not only gets to keep her alcoholic drink, but they actually made a change to it so it's intentional, that is awesome and super surprising. Because realistically, if you're a kid playing this, you're not gonna know what that is. And if you're an adult playing it, it's like, okay, cool, who cares? Like, it's not a big deal. So I think it's cool that it's in there though, and I like that they've changed it to reflect her original Japanese name, which is Margarita and not Martini. In the Valentina fight, we can also see that the visuals for Mallow's Thunderbolt have changed. In the original game, the thunder would come crashing down, it would hit the ground, and then when you time the hit, there would be a white flash. However, in this game, it appears that lightning just happens throughout the entire duration of the attack, and that the timing happens sometime in the middle. It looks a lot more visually striking, pun intended, and so I think this is a good change. We cut back to the forest maze in the trailer and we see a scene of Bowyer, and this is cool because he has now fully animated crazy eyes. He always had them, but they would only actually animate when he was talking or when he was doing an attack, but it appears like they have found a really nice animation loop and his crazy eyes are moving all the time. I know we've talked about cutscenes a lot and speculated on their implementation and usage, but I cannot get over this next one of Mallow falling in the sky, or I should say stars, with Geno surfing on a rainbow. Not only is it one of the sickest visuals I've ever seen, not only is it matching the visual depiction I have in my head just about how cool Geno is, but I have nowhere to place it. I have no idea where it goes. In the original game, there's nothing like this at all. There is only one possible spot I could imagine where this cutscene fits based on the events of the original game. And it's towards the end of the game, so kind of a spoiler like I mentioned before, but when Mario and the party are falling into the gate/factory after they beat Exor, I wonder if this is a stylized version of them falling to really emphasize their character personalities. It would work really well too, right? Like Exor opens his mouth, Mallow falls because he's kind of clumsy, but Geno's cool, he's calm, he's collected. He uses the power of a rainbow to, surf down it, gently descend, all that kind of stuff. But even then, I don't think this is where that would fit, but it's the only spot I could possibly place it. This makes me wonder, are we getting new story cutscenes? Is this potentially one of the super attacks? If it is a super attack, would Mallow be falling like that? I have no idea. If anyone has any speculation or guesses or anything like that where this cutscene would fit, let me know in the comments, because not only have I rewatched it more than any other part of the trailer because I think it's the coolest thing in the trailer, but I am so confused by how this fits into the original Mario RPG that I will take and accept any fan theory, because I got nothing. I have absolutely nothing, but it is pretty sweet. Again, we've already kind of talked about the next couple cutscenes. We see the one with Bowser and Mallow in the clown car. We see the one where Peach is holding her umbrella with Geno and Mario to the side. There is also a desert one where Mario does some running and Peach is holding a superstar. That's really interesting because stars aren't in the original game as items. They're not something a character could hold. They are found in treasure boxes and allow you to beat enemies on the overworld and gain all the experience and coins from them. So I have no idea if this is just a new item, or again, if this is lining up for some sort of super attack and it's a cutscene. I don't know. We also get Gino's scene where he's in space and he is firing on something with both of his arm cannons. Again, don't know where this takes place. Think it's a super attack, but the interesting note here is that Gino moves his mouth, and so I wonder if we're getting voice acting. I don't think it would be much if we get full voice acting, but I could understand them wanting to implement it for special moves, especially for Gino's, because all of his have his name and he, like, in my head at least, visually pronounces them when he says that. And I think a lot of other people get that vibe from the original game, but I wonder if we're getting voice acting. We also see Mallow kind of glowing with yellow electricity. Again, could be to use Thunderbolt, could be to do some other move like Shocker, but it's in a cutscene, so again, it feels like a super attack. Now that I say that though, I do wonder if maybe there is a tutorial for timed hits that you could access at any time, and these are like little opening cutscenes for it, or if these are little opening cutscenes for when someone learns a special move. Because if Mallow learns Shocker and it's introduced to you this way by this big flashy cutscene, you're gonna wanna use that special move. I still don't think that's the case because it does not explain Peach with her parasol and the other characters on the side, and it especially does not explain Bowser and the Koopa Clown car with Mallow. Still holding on to the fact that they're super attacks, but I don't know, it could be a whole bunch of different things. The trailer cuts back to the battle scene once again, and we can see that super jumps and ultra jumps from Mario now have a counter. That is going to be great for anybody who is trying to do the 30 or 100 super jump challenges in game, and that is awesome. Big quality of life change. At Marrymore, we can see that Mario can still be a jerk, which is awesome because, again, if you've never played Super Mario RPG, Mario is a jerk in this game, or at least he can be. I mean, he can be a real jerk, a super jerk. No exaggeration. He can do some pretty terrible things in Super Mario RPG, which is one of the things that made it so fun. And this scene in Marrymore is probably him at his jerkiest, where you're supposed to take Toadstool back. I said Toadstool, you're supposed to take Peach back because she's been, missing, and everyone's worried about her. And Mario's just like, nah, I'm not going back. And everyone chastises him for it. They get in his face. They're like, what's your deal? Why are you being, this way to us? Let's go back. We have to take her back. And this cutscene, again, somehow survived in 2023. 5 years ago, with the sterilized Mario brand, all the new Super Mario Brothers games, all that kind of stuff, you would never see this, but it's here, and I love it. The trailer shows off that Boshi is back on Yoaster Isle. That's great. Boshi's a great character. He's no longer lost in 1996, but we haven't seen our little fat boy yet who's in the egg. I'm sure he's gonna be there. Look, that's part of Super Mario RPG's legacy on the internet already with Big Yoshi. He's gonna be there. He's just not there in that scene. Don't worry. That makes sense with the gameplay. He's gonna be there, but hoping that we get to see our little fat boy soon, and hope we get a nice new render of him. That would be fun. When we're in Booster's Tower, we can see that Booster's toy box still has all of the cameos, which again, can't believe this is in a 2023 Mario game. I thought this would be sterilized, but we see Diskin, we see Samus, and now we can finally see that he also has one of the Stunt Race FX cars. It was always speculated on in the original version, but the sprite work just couldn't handle all of those little cameos. It was a little bit too muddy and noisy and messy, but it is a Stunt Race FX car, and that's great because Stunt Race FX is a great Super Nintendo game. I think it's on NSO. I'm pretty sure it's on NSO. You should totally play it. It's absolutely garbage by modern standards, but back in the day, it was so cool to see a 3D racing game like that. And then we cut to the final scene, and there is so much to speculate on here. So we see a pink star piece. It does its little animation, Mario grabs it, and the rest of the party's watching him, everybody's happy, it's a good time. But guys, there's no pink star piece in the original game. Is this a new star piece? Is this an 8th one? Is this just a recoloration of a different one? I have no idea. And why is it taking place on a white background that appears to be a void? In the original game, every time you got a star piece, the screen would darken up a little bit, but the background of where you obtain that star piece would remain. It would just be there. It would just be darkened out a little bit. I have no idea what's going on here. I've seen some internet theories that say this is why they're dropping the Legend of the Seven Stars subtitle, because maybe there's 8 stars, maybe there's 9 stars, maybe we're getting a whole bunch of new content. I don't know. I'm not sure if that's happening, but I also have a hard time imagining that every single cutscene from when you get a star would take you to a white void and completely just drop the background. Especially because we've seen in other shots like this one here of Marrymore where they've done some work to get rid of the whole void concept in backgrounds. In the original version of Marrymore in this scene, this little pathway to exit it just goes into a blue void, but now they've actually added trees and other visual decorations to make it feel more like a real place. So I don't think they would just use randomly a white void. Here's my guess, and this is gonna age terribly, so come back after the game is released. But here's my guess. The closest star piece to pink in color is the purple star piece, which is the 4th star piece in the original Super Mario RPG. You get the 4th star piece on Star Hill, and anyone who's played that game, the original version, will tell you that that star piece is a little weird. It's the only one in the game with no boss. It's the only one in the game that just kind of appears there. There's not a whole lot of talk from NPCs or the party about it. You do have to go back to Frog Fuchsius just to unlock Star Hill because he's like, oh yeah, I heard a star piece is there. And it's like a one-line dialogue kind of thing. I wonder if this is a slight recoloration of that star piece, but they've added content there. If they've added a boss fight, but they didn't want to show the background, and so just for the trailer, we have the white void. It's the closest in color. It's the one that felt the most incomplete. If you ever go through beta stuff in the original Super Mario RPG for Super Nintendo, Star Hill probably has the most removed assets of any location in the game. I wonder if that's what we're getting in the remake. That's so hard to say. That's such a reach. I understand it. I just have a hard time imagining we'd be getting an 8th star piece and that the animation for accomplishing such a milestone in the game, right, getting a star piece, would be done on a generic white void. I just can't see it, especially when it wasn't that way in the original. Something's going on with this scene. Whether it's edited for the trailer or it is brand new and there's a reason for the white void or something like that, something is going on with this scene. And that makes it really, really exciting. Because I think there's going to be a change here and I have no idea what it is and I want to experience it, which means I want the game. And that's it. With the exception of how the trailer ends with the release date, that's the last scene we see for Super Mario RPG Remake. I promised you guys an overly detailed breakdown of it, and I hope I delivered. I could probably talk about a million more things if you really, really wanted to, but these were the big changes or big confirmations of the original stuff that we got in this trailer. Before you go, please, somebody tell me what you think that Geno rainbow surfing cutscene is and this last one with the star piece, because I need all the fan theories. I need to obsess about this until November 17th. I need to know what people think. As more and more information about this game comes out, I will try to stick with it and cover it because, you know, I've kind of found that reignited spark for content creation because it is Super Mario RPG, but no promises, but I'll try. Thanks everyone for watching, and please let me know what you think those cutscenes are for. I just can't stop thinking about them, and I just really need to know. Thanks everyone.